we have just to program in advance.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be great. Because
Because
certain
I
ideas are
think
there.
this I
Good idea.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
think this idea that Usha has is something that more than one country could use.
Use it.
There
Yes.
seems to be a gap in many cultures. And it also seems that when it gets on the radar of government,
Yes.
that a university is doing this, suddenly the light bulbs go on that maybe this is something we should pay attention to. So with the Indian government at this time, with the people who are there, they may see this as something that's clearly an important piece to overall society to help build. And you know, sometimes it's like yesterday Detlef called me and he said that Uri is going to speak, you know, on the 25th or something. And he said that how should he approach this concept for women? And I said, well, basically two ways. One, from a policy perspective, but also from a man's perspective. What can men do informally, not so much policy because that's formal, but informally, to be helpful and be allies of the whole women's sport, physical activity movement. So I'm very eager to see what he will say, because then he can speak from the heart through the head. And when we can, to me, when we can get men to do that
Yes.
with us, oh my goodness, all sorts of good things could happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can start off with
Yeah.
Dr. Rosa. You had something to hydrate, okay, because you're going to have a marathon session right now. Most distinguished speaker for the day, Madam Rosa DiCattarella, is the Vice President of Itascaway. Professor Rosa Diamaco, President of Itascaway. Madam Beatrice, Vice President of Itascaway. And Professor Darling Kluka, who is the Vice President of IXP. Dr. G. Kishore, Principal and Leader Director. All my dear PE teachers, a warm welcome to one and all to this session of PE and Community Coaching Women Teachers. Today, we are very fortunate to have amidst us Madam Rosa DiCattarella, who is an assistant professor from Austria, from the University of Vienna Center for Sports Science, Department of Sport Pedagogy. Madam had a university degree in physical education, geography, computer science in 92, PhD in sport pedagogy, aging and physical activity in 97, teacher in schools from 93 to 98, and is with the university as an assistant professor at the University of Vienna Sports Sciences, 93-2001. So research and teaching focus had been sport pedagogy, didactics, gender and diversity studies, health promotion, and her functions in national and international scientific associations include Vice President Itascaway, 2017-21, Chair ICSP, International Committee for Sport Pedagogy, 2017-21, Vice President OSG, Austrian Association of Sports Science, 2014-16, and Chair Sport Pedagogy, member of the Scientific Advisory Board of the Front Forum Begwing on Sport, Austrian Women's Forum Physical Education since 2001. Engagement in Sport is co-founder of the Australian Platform for Forum in Sport, Platform for Women's, member of the Scientific Advisory Board of 100% Sport, the Austrian Center for Gender Competence in Sport, member of the Austrian Steering Group on Gender Equality in Sports 2014-20, chair of the Working Group Prevention of Sexual Harassment, Developed in Sport, Gender-Based Violence in Sport 2015, member of the European Expert Pool, COE, on Sexual Violence in Sport. Madam has partnered in various European projects, Erasmus Plus Project ACES 2019-21. Another project of Erasmus is Voices for Truth and Dignity, combating sexual violence in European sport through voices of those affected. SMS Sports Media Stereotypes. Another is UNAPA and PASIO, 18 of physical activity, ANAPA, Adapted PA, LENA, Learning in Old Age, Impala Leisure Time Physical Activity Promotion. European Union Gender-Based Violence in Sport 2016 project. She conducted several nationally funded projects in the area of gender equality and promotion of women and girls in sport, kindergarten, PA for girls in sports in outdoor areas of kindergarten, schoolyards and gender relation 2006-8, August Women's Sport Go School in different sports 2006-12, sexual harassment discrimination in sport, gender training for coaches 2004, 2006, 2012, 2015. Furthermore, ma'am is a member of several editorial boards currently in the Austrian Journal for Female Teachers, Girls in Physical Education since 2001. Indeed, ma'am, we are blessed to have you because it's such a vital topic, a very sensitive topic and of utmost importance. And in India, I think we are just beginning to start off with. A lot of issues are emerging. And we are really blessed to have such an eminent person with vast experience, Madam Rosa Dickett-Miller, with us. I on behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports and also from the Ministry of Women and Child Development, a warm welcome, a most distinguished speaker. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
I also would like to welcome Dr. Rosa Tamiko, President Pascoe, Madam Beatrice Ferreira, Dr. Darling Kluka, Dr. T. Kishore to this session, and all my DP teachers. It's going to be a very interesting session, and I think there'll be lots to learn. So warm welcome to each one of you. Over to you, ma'am, for your session, please.
Okay. You can see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Good afternoon, ladies. There are 5,600 ladies in the audience. That's really amazing. I'm very excited to be part of this seminar. Thank you, Dr. Usha, for inviting us again. It's really always an honor to be here and have so many new role models to tell something, to teach a bit, and to bring also difficult topics like the one I'm teaching today to all of you. So thank you so much for being here. The topic I'm talking is a difficult one. It's on safeguarding in sport, and it's about harassment and abuse in sport. It's the dark side of sport, but not only in sport, it's also occurring in other fields of the society. And I'd like to bring some. In the following, I'd like to bring some myths and looking on safeguarding and protecting children in sport. There are different definitions. We're looking for standards of safeguarding, what can be done on the one hand in sports organizations, but also in general, and what are models of good practice and projects which are running around the world. And I'll close the session with some useful resources. It's incumbent upon all stakeholders in sport, both to adopt general principles for sports, for safe sport, and to implement and monitor policies and procedures. This is a very important issue. And it's pointed that all athletes have a right to be treated with respect and protected from non-accidental violence. This is also in the IOC consensus statements on harassment and abuse in sport. There are some myths going around the world, and the question is, and you should answer it for yourself, harassment and abuse occur in sport, and you can think about if it's false or true. To give the answer, this is true. Despite the numerous well-recognized benefits of sports participation, evidence indicates that harassment and abuse occurs in all sports, at all levels. And this may be compounded by a lack of regulatory policies and procedures in sports organizations. So there is a big discussion going around. Maybe you all have heard about the Me Too social media campaign. This has renewed the awareness of the widespread problem of sexual harassment and assault in different fields of sports. And on 15th of October 2017, American actress Alyssa Milano posted a tweet encouraging survivors of sexual harassment and assault to post Me Too as a status update. And that short tweet sparked a global movement. And since then, Me Too has gained international visibility. And I'm quite sure you have also heard about in India, because it went all over the world. and it made it visible that that the issue is viral, and the hashtag is currently circulating in over 85 countries and has thus significantly expanded beyond the global north, and the initial impetus for countries and has thus significantly expanded beyond the area. So famous actresses and politicians took the lead, but also athletes followed the example, and the result was a tremendous number of affected persons telling their stories publicly, but also critique and questions occurred why affected persons did not react earlier or did tell their stories earlier. And Michaela Maroney showed in her quote that when she was telling people should know it's not just happening in Hollywood, this is happening everywhere. And wherever there is a position of power, there seems to be potential of abuse. I had a dream to go to the Olympics, and the thing that I had to endure to get there was unnecessary and disgusting. And so also athletes took the floor and posted their experiences. Also, she was a multiple gold medal awarded gymnast, and talked about and told about the story. And maybe you heard about Larry Nassar. He was the former gymnast national team doctor and professor at a university college. And he was at least sentenced to 40 to 170, 50 years in prison. So that's really a high number, which is not believable, for sexual assault of at least 260 young girls and women. And the difficult thing is to understand for many persons, how could this be possible? And how could this be possible that nobody told about it? And there is a system around and a procedure which makes this possible, that all the people stop talking. My husband brings me some coffee just to show you. He thought today is the International Austrian Women's Day, is on every day. But coming back to the story about this person, he was, so it is shown that sport is a field where you have to look clearly also what's going on. I'm coming to the second myth.
Madam, I just wanted to mention this. आप देखेंगे ये जो पिक्चर दिखाया था, can you show me the previous slide, please, ma'am?
The last one?
The picture of Dr. Nisar. अब देखिए Me Too movement इंडिया में भी आपने सुना होगा, तो मैडम बता रही थी कि वो तो हॉलीवुड एक्ट्रेस का था, लेकिन उसके साथ ही साथ हमने देखा खेल में भी ये प्रॉब्लम हुई है। लेकिन अभी आप देखते कि आपने ये पिक्चर अगर देखा होगा डॉक्टर लारी नसार का, ये स्पोर्ट्स मेडिसिन के डॉक्टर थे और एक यूनिवर्सिटी में थे और अमेरिकन जिम्नास्ट में सब लोग उतनी गोल्ड मेडल प्रोड्यूस करने वाले फैक्ट्री जैसे थे, जहाँ उन्होंने अराउंड 260 छोटे बच्चों का, जिम्नास्टिक छोटे बच्चे हैं, उनके साथ जो गलत ये किया, उसके वजह से 40 से 175 साल की इनकी जेल हुई है, प्रिजन हुई है। तो अभी आप देखिए ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक है, इसलिए अभी आप इनके बारे में आप गूगल में सर्च कर सकते हैं कि बच्चों के पास साथ इन्होंने कितना बुरा तरह से जो भी ये सेक्सुअल असॉल्ट के बहुत बुरा था। इसलिए हमको जानकारी होनी चाहिए क्या हो रहा है, हमें इसके बारे में थोड़ी अवेयरनेस भी होनी चाहिए। Yes, ma'am. Now I want to speak. Now you can continue.
Thank you for translating. It's really an unbelievable story. You could also ask if whether harassment and abuse do not occur in my sport, and you can think about if it's right or false. And as you may imagine, it's false as well. Harassment and abuse do not occur in my sport. There are different studies, one of fasting, which demonstrates that harassment and abuse occurs in all sport. And the assumptions about the risk of being harassed is not higher in different sports. It doesn't depend on, it could be possible in each sport. And the question is the power which is going around and the setting in which it occurs. Harassment and abuse in sport only occur in certain countries. You can think about if it's right or false. And as I'm quite sure you were right, harassment and abuse in sport, there are also a number of studies demonstrating that this is worldwide. It's not a phenomenon of the Western industrialized countries or from the north, from the south, from Asia. So it's a worldwide phenomenon, and it should be tackled in a worldwide area as well. If you have never had a reported case of harassment and abuse, this issue doesn't concern us, right or wrong. It's also wrong. Just if you don't having heard about it doesn't mean that there isn't any case. In some areas, if they don't speak about or they're very restricted in speaking, you should have a look at it, what's going on there. Doesn't mean that there has to be a case, but it's possible. And sometimes if you start speaking about it, could be that the numbers are increasing because people think about, oh, when it occurred in the time, I didn't realize that this is a case, but nowadays maybe I know about because I'm having grown older, getting older, and have more information around, and have realized maybe later that this could be a case. Harassment and abuse is not a problem for elite athletes, right or wrong. It's also false. Studies have demonstrated an increased risk of harassment and abuse at the highest performance level. So the higher the chances to get for higher positions or to get a medalist, to go to championships, the higher persons are at risk because they are interested, they have a very important goal and they want to get this goal, they want to reach this goal, whatever it costs. Athlete safeguarding should concern everyone working in sport. The answer is, of course. Everyone involved in organized sport shared the responsibility to adhere the principles of safe sport through best practice and implementation and adherence of safeguarding policies. So everyone involved in sport, if it's the coach, the official, the parents, should be aware of this issue and should take measurements to tackle this difficult phenomenon. Elite athletes with impairment have a lower risk of harassment and abuse. We know about studies that this is not true, and that athletes with disabilities have an increased risk of abuse compared to their able-bodied counterparts. There are many reasons for this. One could be the daily needs or the daily care needs of some para-athletes, for example, and in trying to meet those needs, roles and responsibilities among the athletes' entourage can become blurred or increasing the risk of maltreatment. So have a look at different persons, especially those with impairments and disabilities that they could be at risk as well. So coming to prevalence rates, this is a difficult issue as well. European statistics show in different studies that 1 out of 5 athletes at least had experienced some form of sexual violence in sport. This could be touches and abuse as well. 1 out of 3 German squad athletes had experienced some form of sexual violence in sport, and I'm coming later on which kind of violence are possible. And 1 out of 9 German athletes experienced severe sexual violence, such as sexual assault and rape. So it's really a difficult issue. 1 out of 4 girls tells about having been sexually abused by their 18th birthday. 1 out of 6 boys as well. So it's not only a phenomenon of girls and women being at risk, but also boys. And we have, especially in the newer prevalent studies, lots of signs that the boys are at same risk as girls as well, because they're also very interested in getting higher positions and having special goals for it. There are new reports, one of 2020, on the issue of child sexual abuse in sport. with lots of data, research results, bringing them together. So if you're interested in further details on studies and data, have a look at this issue. So coming to definitions, what are we speaking about? What is safeguarding? It refers to the process of protecting children or adults as well, to provide safe and effective care on the one hand, and this includes all procedures designed to prevent harm to child. What is child protection? This is a part of safeguarding process, protecting individual children identified as suffering or likely to suffer significant harm. This includes child protection procedures, which detail how to respond to concerns about the child, so that you know how to react if you hear about a story. What is abuse? Child abuse is any form of physical, emotional, or sexual mistreatment, or also a lack of care that leads to injury or harm. So it's also a very broad field of phenomenons. Normally, it occurs within a relationship of trust, and this is the difficult thing because you're in a surrounding with trustful persons, with trustful coaches, with trustful parents, and in this relationship of trust or responsibility, the power position is misused, and there could be a breach of trust. So abuse can happen to a child regardless of the age, gender, or ability. And we have spoken about these 4 types: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. And in addition, there is also bullying, poor practice, and it could also occur in a peer group as well as coaches. Who are the abusers? Normally you think about the dark man behind a tree. This is not the case in this area. Abusers are usually known to and trusted by the child and by the family. So the whole system is trusting this person. In general, they are adults. There are females as well, but the priority of the abusers is male. It could be young people and peers. It could be also family members. It could be also someone the child encounters in a residential setting or in the community, including sports and also leisure activities. And an individual may abuse or neglect a child directly, or may be responsible for the abuse because they fail to prevent. So if I'm the president of a sports organization and I know about stories and about abuse in my organization and I don't do anything, I'm also responsible for this abuse, and I have to react and I have to set steps against the situation. The situation, right, is so difficult that people speak up or tell others about what they have experienced. This is possible because they're offenders and abusers very often use a grooming process which prepared them that the target, the victims won't speak. So they're looking for people, for young people who are not sometimes not very sure about themselves. Then if they have emotional needs or a low self-confidence, so they're looking quite clearly which could be a perfect victim. Then they start gaining trust and information. They try to gain trust at the parents. They give them small gifts. Always looking for having good confidence to the parents. They are looking if there is any need the young people has to make them dependent of them. Then very often they try to isolate the potential victim, telling sometimes also bad stories about the person, so that also the surrounding thinks about that this person which gets a victim afterwards is not very trustable or telling strange things. And after everything is prepared in the surrounding, then the abuse begins, and then the offender or the abuser can be quite sure that the victim won't speak to anybody, or the surrounding, the environment won't believe if the victim is telling some stories. And this process of grooming makes it so difficult to start speaking up, because the person tries to maintain control and ensures the whole surrounding. And this makes it very difficult for people to speak. I tried to show you a video. I hope it will work. I just have to change. And I also have to change. Moment.
Pranesh can play it for me. Is that okay?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah, Pranesh, please. Pranesh, you need to come here. Voice is not there. No voice.
In the beginning, there is no voice. I think it starts a bit later because it's
Yeah,
just.
yeah, that's what. So it's about a project.
It's about a person in the Voice project who tells her story. She was a former gymnast, and
on the field. There is a lot of violence happening on the fields and in the gyms, in the pools against athletes. It was my passion. I just wanted to do gymnastics and represent my country at the Olympics. He controlled everything. You have to understand that in gymnastics, the bond is really very strong because you trust your coach with your life, literally. I would not question him if he made me do bars with a cast on my leg. I would not question him if he ordered me to open my mouth for him. It becomes one of your more important goals in your life is to keep that secret. You were raised to be a role model. You're raised to be a champion, and being a little slut is not being a role model, and that's what you believe. Right now, I am in a project called Voice, and it's all about hearing the voices of those who were affected by sexual abuse in sport. Society needs to listen to those stories, and listen not just with your ears. You have to listen with your eyes, with your heart, because the signs are always there. And only after you listen to those stories and learn how those environments work, only then you can understand and you can really work on prevention.
thank you so much for. I think we could stop the video here.
You can stop sharing.
Yeah. She's one of our. Should I share my screen again?
Yeah.
She's a very interesting person because she's ambassador for the issue of sexual violence in sports, and it's very helpful that person starts speaking and others are listening. And we have collected in this project the stories of men and women, girls and boys who have been affected from abuse and sexual abuse. And these stories helped the sports organization to look closer what's going on, and hearing the stories and getting information, what should they have done before and what should they do that it wouldn't be able that abuse and violence is occurring in sport organizations. So on that occasion, the international organizations, national organizations started developing standards for safeguarding and protecting children in sport. And I brought for you those standards which Child Protection in Sport Unit England developed in a very interesting way, and it's easy to download this information, and it shows quite clearly what could be done and what could be done in the area of prevention. So these standards are helpful because they offer benefits for children and young people, for parents and carers, for all the people working in sport, and at least for the sports organizations themselves, because it's important for them to show that they're proactive in this issue and they're actively working on safeguarding. And the aim is to create a safe sporting environment, so that the whole environment is protecting children, young people from harm, to provide a benchmark to assist those involved in sport to make good decisions, and to promote good practice and challenge practice that is harmful to children. So coming to the 10 standards, I'd like to start with the first one. And the starting point is always having a good policy and having a commitment of those who are responsible in sport to show everybody that sport is a field where everybody is looking that it's a safe sport environment. You see the picture in the right. These are the ministers, the head of the Austrian sports organizations, signing together with all presidents of all sports federations in Austria that we're looking together for safe environments and for safeguard protection. And you have to ask if there is a statement of intent that demonstrates this commitment to safeguard children. And this shows also that sports and the organization is taking its duty of care seriously. This is an important issue. The second standard where you can look at if an organization takes this issue and takes the responsibility is if there are procedures and operating systems. If procedures provide clear step-by-step guidance on what to do in different situations and who is responsible if there is a case. So systems should ensure that procedures are implemented and information is offered. So there could be question, is it clear what to do if there are concerns about the child? Is there a guidance, for example, also on photography, of social media, texting and emailing, which is also a very important issue nowadays, where you can set strange informations into the social media. Is there a designated safeguarding person in the organization who is responsible to implement this? And our complaints about abusive behavior dealt with effectively. So think about the questions, think about your organizations, and is this standard implemented? The third point is prevention. Measures to help minimize the risks of children. You can't at least be totally sure 100% it won't occur, but to minimize the risk, are there persons, positions of trust, and are safeguards put in place? And are there procedures for recruiting people? So you have to have a look, who are the persons who are getting coaches? Who are the persons who are working with young people and children? Which profession do they have? What about staff and volunteers? And what about unacceptable behavior? Is there anything written about? What about trips and transporting children? There are also the stories tell that these are situations which could be difficult as well. Very important, the question, if there are codes of practice, codes of behavior, codes of ethics in the field, and do all the people working with young people and children have designed it? Are they aware of it so that they know what are the benchmarks of what is acceptable and what not? Equity is a basis behind, because measures to ensure the needs of all children, of young people, and to set steps to combat discrimination is important, because abuse, harassment always starts with discrimination, with making people different people. These are the good ones and the not that good ones. These are the girls or the boys. So have a look at if the rights of children are the same and that there is no discrimination. And you have to ask if staff and volunteers support and recognize additional vulnerability to children, and are procedures fair and open to challenge through an appeals process. So have a look on equity, very important. The best thing is having standards and procedures that they're only effective if people know about it, if they're aware of them, if they have some ownership of them, and if there is an opportunity to express their views on how they're working. So is the organization openly committed? Is it visible that the organization has safeguarding standards? Do also the young people know about their rights? That's an important issue as well. Which rights do the young athletes have in an organization? Is it possible that they speak if something is not okay? To whom could they go if there is something not okay? So it's important that everybody knows who to contact if they have any concerns. This could start with harmless things or things like, I don't know exactly, which are not very important, but it starts with the small things and ends with the difficult one. The seventh standard is education and training. So organizations should provide sporting activities for children, have a responsibility to provide training and development for staff and volunteers. Is there an induction process for staff and volunteers? Are staff and volunteers provided with relevant information on safeguarding? Is support available to individuals? So educating and training, gender trainings, safeguarding trainings are important, that all the staff and volunteers know about what to do, what are their rights and what are the rights of the young athletes as well. Access to advice and support. This is important, that the organizations have a duty to ensure advice and support, that they are in place. And you should also ask the question, do children have the information? Do those with designated safeguarding roles have access to specialists? So if there is a case, it is in many cases necessary to have an expert on your hand, a psychotherapist on your hand who knows how to deal with the case, how to deal with the stories, how to realize what's really going on, because as a coach, you normally are not prepared in therapeutical aspects as well. So if, for example, if we have a case in Austria, we have a group who is with experts, and we bring those people to them because they know exactly what to do. If they need further assistance, if they need a process, an accompanying person in the process, and so on. And this is more than a sports official knows at the end. To implement and monitor the policies in all parts of the organization. If they're recorded and monitored, will young people and parents be involved? These are questions. And the last of the 10 standards is influencing and assessment. Is the organization's stance on safeguarding made clear to all partners? So if you have a sponsor, for example, does the sponsor also know what the rules, the regulations, the standards for safeguarding are? Does partnership funding, commissioning criteria include this requirement to address safeguarding? So all actions taken by the organization to influence, encourage, and promote the adoption and implementation of measures to safeguard children by the partner organizations. So it's not only the responsibility of the organization itself, also the partners should be involved in these. What about models of good practice and projects? In Austria, and it's an example for also other countries as well, we have a campaign, it's called For Respect and Safety, or We Take Care of Each Other. We produced flyers and posters, and one aspect is very important to show clear rules how to work together. And we tried to put all this information on a poster, like the one in the right, where we described in which situations do we have to act. And there are main rules like respect, communication and clear roles, supervision and 6 eyes principle. Also try to avoid situations to be as a coach alone with one athlete, for example. And think about sporting assistance and physical touches, how to act and how to react in the situations.
The previous slide, Rosa, you just mentioned about what are the 6 eyes? What does it mean?
That at least 3 persons are always in a situation. Avoid situations that the coach is alone with one athlete.
Thank you.
And nobody is allowed to join this situation. This helps the coach on the one hand, and this helps the athlete as well. I'm sure, I know it's not always possible, but if a situation like 4 eyes are necessary, then inform the parents, then inform the others what's the reason, what's going on in this situation, and that it's a transparent situation where in principle everybody, other persons could join as well. So it's not a hidden situation, it's an open situation. And this is is helpful for the coaches as well as for the athletes.
Thank you, thanks.
Of course. We also identified situations where you should open your eyes. You open your eyes very wide, very widely. If there are situations, if children are mocked, outsiders or ridiculed, and if it's very visible, then you should have an eye what's going on there. A situation if individual children are repeatedly selected for certain activities, receiving gifts or receiving special attention, is a situation where you should open your eyes. If there are SMS messages with personal contents which has nothing to do with sports, is something strange. It could be no problem, but these are typical situations in the grooming process where to gain confidence, where to make a person a very special one, and you should have an eye on it. If private training sessions or meetings are increasing, and then coaches are often alone with specific childs. If there are touches which are not related to sport, especially in the grooming process, the touches started with accidental touches, but if they're repeating, it occurs in sport, of course. If you have to help in an exercise, it's no problem, but if it's this accidental one touches are repeating, inappropriate, then you should have an eye on it. If there are jokes and stories about a sexual background told to the children, or inappropriate comments about the physical appearance, this is a typical sign. Or if children change or show abnormalities, so if they're getting very close or very distant, if there is negative or overly critical physical awareness, if there are eating disorders starting, then it's often a sign that something is not okay. It could be something else as well, but eating disorders are always a sign that something is not okay. It could be in the area of the family, it could be in the development of the children, but it could also be some kind of abuse or neglect, which should be taken seriously. Or if children start excessive sport in comparison to the situation before, if they start avoiding sport, if they don't want to go to the training anymore, then you should ask them what's the reason. Most of our victims told that nobody asked, and if they told something, they didn't believe and didn't hear to them. So listen what they're telling you, and listen to the signs. There, in many cases, in most of the cases, there were signs, they were sending signals, but the environment didn't hear it or didn't identify them in the right way and didn't ask further. And this is one of the main messages also today to have a look at.
Rosa, could you just take the previous slide, just explain that? I think that is very important for them. The previous one, please. I'll just translate this.
Yeah.
मैम बता रही थी कि हमें किस सिचुएशन में हमको जरा हमें ध्यान रखना चाहिए। एक तो जब बच्चों की मजाक उड़ाई जाती है या बच्चों को बाहर खड़ा करते हैं, ऐसे मौके में जो कोच या कोई भी, कोच सिर्फ नहीं है, कोई भी जो बच्चों के माने इसे सब देखते हैं, डॉक्टर्स या जो भी बच्चों के इसमें आते हैं, संबंध में आते हैं, जब हम खेल खिलाते हैं तो उसके बारे में ध्यान रखना है। और बच्चों को अगर आपको देखा जा रहा है कि बार बार हम एक ही बच्चे को बुलाया जा रहा है, तो हमें या उसको कुछ गिफ्ट दे रहे हैं या उस पे ज्यादा अटेंशन दिया जा रहा है, फिर हमें सोचना चाहिए क्या ये सही है। हमें जस्ट इंक्वायर करना चाहिए क्या है। फिर हम कई बार देखिए, कई बार बच्चों को पर्सनल, क्योंकि आजकल सबके पास मोबाइल रहती है बच्चों के पास, तो पर्सनल मैसेज देना या SMS भेजना, तो ये भी एक शायद इसके लिए भी अगर हो सके तो हमें वो भी ध्यान में रखना है। और अगर बच्चों को, हमारे ट्रेनिंग सेशन है, लेकिन ये सेशन हम ऐसा करेंगे कि हम बच्चों को इंडिविजुअल ट्रेनिंग के लिए बुलाते हैं, तो ऐसा अगर बच्चा अकेला आए तो वो भी गलत है। फिर अगर हमें लग रहा है कि आपको टच के बारे में, जिस तरह से बच्चा जो टच होता है वो अलग अलग तरीके से बच्चों को बताना पड़ेगा। एक बार अनजाने में टच किया, लेकिन बार बार अगर ऐसे टच किया तो वो अनजाना नहीं हो सकता है, वो भी गलत है। कई मजाक उड़ाते हैं, जो कहानियां जो गलत तरीके से जो बोलते हैं, उसके बारे में भी हमें देखना चाहिए। कई बार हम देखते हैं कि बच्चे जब वापस घर आते हैं, वो माता पिता के पास या और उनका पास नहीं आते हैं, या तो बहुत दूर जाते हैं, या खाना नहीं खाते हैं, या बहुत ज्यादा एक्टिविटी करते हैं। ये सब हमें बच्चों की तरफ ध्यान रखना पड़ता है, क्योंकि ये सब दिखा दे कि बच्चों में शुरू में कुछ है, कुछ वजह है। हमेशा जरूरी नहीं है कि यही वजह हो, लेकिन इसके पास सही जानकारी होनी जरूरी है। थैंक यू मैम। थैंक्स मैम।
Thank you, Usha, for translating. And one may ask what to do to strengthen children and young people. One comment before, this is important, but the responsibility never has the child itself or the children. The responsibility that to create safe environments, have the officials, have the parents, have the coaches, and not the children. But on the other hand, we know from different studies that the stronger children are, the less likely at the end it could be for them to be at risk. And so what could we do to strengthen the children and the girls especially is to remove taboos. This is a difficult issue also in Austria. We struggle a lot in the discussion with the coaches who think, wow, why do we have to speak about it? It's clear for us, but start removing taboos, and you could start also in the area of children to make them know what their rights are, what is appropriate and what not, which touch is appropriate and which is not. And the decision what is appropriate and not is the children itself, where the children says, this is not okay for me, there is the stop. And so it's a kind of relative, it's not absolute. On the other hand, making children strong and give them the self-confidence to decide for them what's good for them and what not, and where is the stop and where is the border for them. So it's very important to develop self and body confidence for them. And this means also how to speak about the body. One of the problems we realized from the stories of those being affected was that they had no words for speaking up what they had to experience. And this is also a taboo because speaking about body regions, areas is not always very common, and we very often avoid speaking about. This could be an option to give them words for what they are experiencing, and this helps them as well. Protecting their boundaries to start within games when and how to say no and how to do it. And very important is that they know persons of trust and where to go to speak up if anything is not okay. There is, for example, a colleague of mine who is doing preventive seminars in schools with children in the age from 6 to 10. And one exercise is to write themselves a letter with names to whom they would go if there is anything happening. And they're asked to keep this letter for themselves. So if there is a situation, then they exactly know, they have already thought about who could be a person in trust for them, and they know where to go to. So you can also exercise kinds like this. And an issue is as well to sensitize parents, that they know what organizations are dealing with, what are the rules, that children are aware about this issue, that children are also aware about their rights, and to make this issue very transparent for all in the system.
Ma'am, could I just explain that, please, ma'am?
Yeah, of course, I'll give it back.
मैम मैं बता दी कि हमें बच्चों में क्या किसी से ज्ञान देना है, किस तरह से उनको हमें तैयार करना है छोटे बच्चों का। सबसे पहले हमें उनका जो अधिकार है, उसके अधिकार क्या है, इसके बारे में जानकारी होना बहुत जरूरी है, और क्या सही है क्या गलत है इसके बारे में जानकारी चाहिए। और अपने खुद के शरीर का कौन कौन सा भाग है, उस शरीर के बारे में बात करने का भी हिम्मत होना चाहिए। बच्चे कई बार बोल नहीं पाते हैं, हमें बहुत जरूरी है कि उनमें ये हिम्मत देनी चाहिए, और उससे पहले ही जब है तो वो बात करें, क्योंकि जब बच्चों को पूछा जाए आपको कहाँ से क्या हुआ, बच्चे बोल नहीं पाते हैं। और दूसरी है कि बहुत ये बाउंड्री से हम बच्चों का नहीं बड़ों का भी देखते हैं कि अभी जब कुछ गलत कदम होता है तो उसमें हमें ना बोलना, नहीं ये नहीं हो सकता, इस तरह का जो हिम्मत अगर हम बच्चों में ला पाए तो हर चीज में उनके लिए उसके लिए तैयारी करना जरूरी है। लेकिन ये सब होने के बावजूद भी अगर हमारे पास कुछ हम बच्चों को कुछ तकलीफ या कुछ ऐसे प्रॉब्लम्स आई है तो किसके पास जाए, कुछ लेटर लिख के किसके पास जाए, किसके पास जाके कंप्लेन करें। हम यहाँ देखते कि कई बार जिसके पास जाते वो सही उस पर भरोसा रखते नहीं है, कोई ये हो रहा कि जो भरोसा बनता है। तो मैडम कहती इन्होंने इनका एक प्रिवेंशन का जो वर्कशॉप चला, तो इसमें बच्चों ने खुद अपने लिए चिट्ठी लिखा, अपने लिए अपने नाम पे कि ऐसा अगर है, ऐसा हो रहा है, खुद पे एक लिखा, जैसे कि जो हो रहा है वो कैसे हो रहा है, क्या क्या मेरे साथ हो रहा है, ये मैं किसी को बोलना चाहती हूँ, लेकिन पहले मैं अपने भी दे रही हूँ। और हमें पेरेंट्स को भी जरूर उनको सेंसिटाइज करना चाहिए, बोलना चाहिए कि ज्यादा इसमें घबराने की बात है। साथ ही साथ बच्चों की जो ध्यान देना जरूरी है कि सब अगर मिलेंगे तब ये जो निषेध है इसको हम कम कर सकते हैं। हम नहीं बोले पूरा हटा सकते हैं, लेकिन कम कर सकते हैं।
Thank you for the translation.
Ma'am, there was one question. Somebody was asking what are 6 eyes again, because they did not understand that. I think there are frequent questions. Madam जो 6 eyes बोले थे, मैडम बोलते माने कम से कम 3 लोग हैं तभी तो 6 आंख होंगे। तो कभी भी कोच अकेला नहीं रहना चाहिए। कोच अकेला अगर एक एथलीट का प्लेयर के साथ रहा है, दैट मींस हम सोच सकते हैं अगर वो बार-बार अकेला रहा है वो सही नहीं है। इसलिए कम से कम 3 लोग होंगे तभी तो 3 बच्चे होंगे, तो हम बोलते हैं 6 आंख। Okay, thank you. Thanks, ma'am.
now I'm looking at different organizations and what they have done and materials which you could use. IOC developed a toolkit for international federations and national Olympic committees on this issue. A great brochure with very good information, what could organizations do and what they have to do. In Europe, for example, the Council of Europe has also promoted a program on child safeguarding in sport to up your game, strengthen your squad, where the council is interested that its sports organizations are dealing on this issue. FIFA, the International Football Association, also tackles this issue and developed also a toolkit for its member organizations. So very interesting, because football is very male dominated, and also for them it's important to focus on the issue of safeguarding. And as you can see here, they have also developed 5 principles and steps what the organizations, member organizations, could do in prevention, in the area of prevention. I told you already about the Voices project, and you have here links to the web page of the program, the project, because there are not only good practice guides, but also videos and resources, short videos and resources, which could be helpful in sensitizing people, and which could help you to get informations from the persons who are affected and their stories, because they're so emotional, the stories, that people start thinking about what could we do that harassment and abuse wouldn't be an issue in sports anymore. And what I've told before is that to strengthen the self-confidence of girls and boys as well is one of the main issues in the fight against sexual harassment. And I found different examples. One of them is, for example, the karate and self-defense courses for girls against sexual violence, one example of India. Or the other one was the Laureo Sport for Good Award in Yuba and Yuba School. There, the issue was to increase self-confidence of women and girls, to make their efforts visible, is very, very helpful and very important on the way to prevent sexual harassment and issue. By the way, sports and physical activity is very good at the end. So not every, don't be afraid that in each sport organization there would be a problem. But, and sport is so helpful for young people and young women, especially for their development. To keep a safe environment, or to create a safe environment, is an important step that girls are encouraged to join sports organizations, sports clubs. And if the organization could make clear and show transparently to the parents and the whole society that they take the issue of safe environments seriously, then I would say that the number of girls who would be interested joining sport could be higher and increasing as well. So there is a connection between participation and having safe environments in the field. And in this situation, I would encourage you to, with your engagement, with your motivation as teacher, as role model, as a coach, to work together with the organization to create this safe environment. Finally, I have some useful resources in the PDF, which got already. And thank you very much for your attention, and hope you could hear different aspects and visions what you could do next in your organization. Thank you.
a lot, Dr. Rosa. And can you stop sharing the screen so that I can just ask some questions, because there are some questions have merged. And one of the question is, please discuss something on the psychological effect of women's sports, especially teenagers, with regard to the same topic.
Teenagers in the age between, I would say, 12 to 18, or it depends on what you want to look at. This is a phase where girls are also looking around what could be interesting for their further development, and which contribution sports, being an athlete, could be in their development, and which role this could play. And girls are looking quite closely what's good for them and what not. And if the situation, the environment is not safe enough, or if there is some discrimination going around, subtle or directly, girls very clearly see if this is good or not good for them. And lots of girls are quitting sports organizations if the environment does not fit. This is the one thing. On the other hand, we've heard about in different voices about relationships between coaches and athletes, mostly male coaches and female athletes. And psychology or psychological advice research in the area of system research would say this is an absolutely no-go. And it's a problem if there is a professional relationship mixed with a personal relationship, especially if there is a power difference in it as well. So in Austria, they would advise coaches, if they want to start a personal relationship to an athlete, they should stop the professional relationship as a coach, because it doesn't fit together. And on the other hand, sometimes there are stories told from coaches that they say, oh, the teenagers were so interested in having a relationship with me. The responsibility always has the coach, and it's a no-go for a coach starting this engagement, especially if the teenagers or children are under the age of 18. Afterwards, it's difficult as well, but the way before is no. And the coach has a specific role, and he has not the role being the boyfriend of an athlete. Whatever the young teenagers are saying, their role of teenagers is to have a look how the surrounding is reacting on them, to make friends, having a position. But at the end, there is a clear role which the coach has, and a clear role what the athlete has, and the coach has to make this clear as well, and not the teenager or the young person.
There's another question put forth, is if somebody is passing some comments which are sarcastic sort of a remark, so can this come under the category of sexual harassment?
We've heard about the grooming process, and this process very often starts with discrimination, sarcastic comments on the physical appearance, which brings potential victims to an area that they're not very confident with them. And this is a strategy as well. On the other hand, in an area of respect and fairness, sarcastic comments are not appropriate.
Another question, I think this 6 eyes, many of us are saying they had still doubt with this, because you put in 6 eyes, that's one. But besides that, Tapati Banerjee has said sometimes it is observed, even I wanted to put the same question, girl child and their parents do not inform or tell anyone of what their child faces. If the child faces any abuse because they are afraid of the society, what the society will tell, what will they think? So in this situation, how would you guide and help them to come out?
Coming out always needs a very trustful environment. And the first step is to have create trustful environments that helps the people to speak. It's difficult that people who have experienced abuse and discrimination to speak up, but the only thing is developing an environment of trust, developing also in the organization an environment of transparency, where it's clear for everybody joining the organization, if it's a coach or a parent or children, that it's a culture of transparency and an atmosphere of speaking about things which are going on. And then it's easier for person. It's not easy at all, that's for sure, but then it's easier. And if there is something going on where people have problems in speaking up, you always are supported. It's always helpful to have external experts which are not that much involved that could help in this situation. So good cooperation of sports organizations with victim support organizations are necessary to establish this environment as well.
Another thing is, could you just again explain the 6 I's? I think that question has been asked a number of times.
The 6 I's principle is a principle that could help people, that could help the coaches against accusations which are maybe not right. And this principle could help also the children and the parents, that they know, because if there are more people in a situation, more than 2 persons in a situation, then it's more difficult that something occurs which is not okay, because another person is in the situation and could speak. So it's a kind of privacy, or that to avoid to be alone with a coach. It's a transparent situation. Whenever, if it is possible, it should be used as a principle. And if it's not possible, for example, in transporting situations, when I, as a coach, maybe bring a child home with my car, then to make clear to the parents that this, I'll bring the child back, make it clear to the children in which situation this is necessary, and speak about it. Not only do it, but speak about it and make it clear what's going on. And that the child is always available, it's able that the child could be called by phone by the parents. So there is always a possibility of communication in this situation.
There's another question by Kalolini Samantre. That is, sometimes a child can understand what is a good touch or a bad touch. So how do we, what could we do to help the child? Like initially, how do we, put it across to the child? The child may not know what a good touch and a bad touch is like.
Could you bring the first sentence you said, the situation?
Sometimes a child can't understand the difference between a good touch and a bad touch. So how can you introduce this particular topic to a child?
Okay. You could explain it quite easily to tell the children how would we work together in the sports club, in the sports organization, or in a class in school, and which are the rules, how we speak together, how we work together, how we name parts of the body, for example, in the PE class. You can do it also if you have to speak about physical touches, what is allowed, what is forbidden. If it happens, how could you tell me that it's not okay for you? And this would be an important issue when you start with a course, for example, in the first session, inviting the parents as well. Maybe you have written parts, how we work together. So especially the first session is very important to make clear what are the standards, how we work together. And in this occasion, you could easily focus on the different issues. And then you should do it in any session you have, that you realize these principles, that you implement these principles and you do it what you have negotiated in the first session.
Now, another question is, it's similar to this only. It may not be with touch, but for a child experience abuse, but then they may not know how to speak up, how to say the abuse. So what could be done in such a case? If you say that we can see various, we can observe some of the behavior, whatever the cases, but how is that, what would we could tell the child, like how it is, like the child can bring about? Yes, that's another question.
If you have signs as an adult and you see that something had happened, and for the children it's very difficult to speak about, offer an external expert, psychotherapist, or from victims supporters organizations. They know exactly how to speak with the young people. The question is, does this information that you have seen something as an adult, that something is not something is going wrong with the children, and the way to get these children to an expert? Speaking is helpful. Start speaking with the children, ask what's going on, asking several times what happened. If you realize that there has happened something and the children is not able to speak, offer external expertise. This is a very a difficult part, and we are not educated or trained in doing this, and the experts know what they should do, and then they can identify the next steps which are helpful.
There are something about because they didn't understand the word of taboo, remove taboo माने जो कई हम बोलते हैं वर्चना हटाना, कि कई चीजें हमारे कल्चर के मुताबिक सही नहीं मानी जाती है, हम बोलते नहीं, उसको हम बोलते हैं वर्चना जो है उसको टैबू बोलते हैं, उसको हमें हटाने का है। कई हमें लगता है कि हमारी जो रीति रिवाज है इसमें ये बोलना सही नहीं है, तो उसके लिए हम टेबू बोल देते हैं। अब उस टेबू को हटाने के लिए रिमूव टेबू करके बात किया। And there were a lot of questions. I think Darlin left. My God, I was wanting to have Darlin just gone. I was wanting Darlin's remarks. It is already time. I hope she comes back. There's one question which I think there are a lot of questions for you. I think that enough of questions. Look at the chat box. They say most of the time children are during this COVID time. Most of them are at home, and when they are at home, and the chances are it can go still bad. So in such cases, you find at times this may not be for the athletes and coaches. I'm talking in general. So in that case, what do you suggest? Because the second question was, most of them are with mobiles rather than playing. So do you think that this technology has something to do with when you talk of the when you talk of this harassment, technology and harassment?
Yes. Yeah, difficult situation. On the one hand, it is, if there is COVID and you're at home, then you're at risk of your family. This is one issue. Many cases occur in the family area. On the other hand, lots of the victims supporters organizations have already switched to the digital support as well. So for example, in Austria, all of the victim support organizations offer video conferences for their support and try to find a way under secure situations to get in contact. But it's a learning process as well for the victim organizations how to do. But this is much more difficult, that's for sure, because communication is reduced in a very typical way, and it's not the best for supporting victims. That's for sure. I hope this was the answer of the question.
Sure. I think there are a lot of questions in the chat box. We happen to say I'm not able to. I'm extremely sorry. I was wanting Darlene to speak, but I never knew Darlene would be leaving so soon because it's not a time. And let's go for the remarks. Madam Beatrice, for your remarks, please.
Well, Rosa, thank you. Thank you very much for bringing such an important theme. It's a very touching one. As you said, harassment and abuse are the dark part of human being, but you brought some hope. You brought, very good how the society is going this direction. And it's very important to remember for all of us that everything, all the change depends on us too. As a professor, as a physical education coach, as a human being. And although you brought some very good concepts that people have already worked on, because the concepts are very important because it grabs the meaning of the issue, the physical, psychological, and social area. And also, it can bring the rules and the guidelines that it shows to control the problem at the international and national level. I'm sure that some areas are much more developed, like Austria or other in the United States and etc. In some areas is more difficult because people even don't know what's happening, and they accept all the problem, all the abuse, and they didn't know how to do it. This, but well, I think we are going to work for this. And it's very important, Usha, that you brought these very good issues, and it's a human rights. And then we can think about human rights. And also another theme that has been discussed in science is scientific advocacy. It's the way that you bring the results of the science in the direction of human rights. And we should advocacy for all of these themes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rosa. Very good.
Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you so much. Darlene, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for coming
Okay.
back. You came in right in time. For your remarks, please.
Beatrice, I think you had some very good comments I could hear, but somehow things froze. At any rate, Dr. Rosa, I am really appreciative of this session for you to give the perhaps some solutions or some things to try that perhaps people have not thought of before. What I was trying to do to be helpful was to go through questions and answers in chat to see if there were some things that could be answered easily and specifically to people, because some of the questions were, I thought, more private in a sense. So I hope that helped with what you were saying. But I noticed that many people thought the 6 eyes were a good addition. Sometimes it's even small things that happen right there that make a big difference. I think, Rosa, maybe not this time, but the last time we were together, you mentioned when people have meetings with their athletes, student athletes, that they should keep the door open, or at least open a little, so that people are not behind closed doors by themselves with one student or one child. And that's a small thing, but it's an important thing. And if someone says to you, why don't you close the door? You say, because I want to.
There's a problem. I think there is a problem.
Yeah.
I think she will say that to keep it transparent and open and
Open, and that's a very interesting thing. We did have issues where something was behind the closed doors and that
Yeah.
thing had come in, and there has been a problem as such.
Mm.
So maybe that this is a very valid point which is put across to us.
Mm.
And it's been such a, because I think for me, there are a lot of points which have emerged. It's opened doors for a lot of things. For example, as you said, can we have a series where you can have the coaches? Yes, we have got Kluka. Kluka is again come in. So maybe it's required because we need to listen to her. And it's been very informative. And I think this time is too short for us. With the coaches, it will be of utmost importance.
Mhm.
Because at times the coach may not be wrong, but at times the coach is blamed.
Mhm.
It's one issue. And our children are not aware of their rights. You
Mhm.
ask our children, we do have a lot of programs. We have gender sensitization, we bring in, but they all would sleep. Because only when something happens to a person, it's only then that they're awake.
Mhm.
Even for a 17-year-old, 20, you ask them what the rights are, they may not be able to speak of the rights. That's what I was wanting, a small change. We have now a lot of teachers across here. So a lot who are taking initiative, because that's a very valid point where you know what your rights are. And it's okay to say no, but in certain cases, in high performance, our athletes could not speak of anything.
Mm.
That's a problem. Hi, darling, can you hear me? Darling, can you hear me?
She's mute.
Can you hear me, darling?
I don't see her.
She's already joined. She's coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, darling. I think there's a problem with this. Hello.
Sometimes no, she's having problems. I don't know.
Fine, fine. So it's okay.
What we can say is that a good pedagogy with respecting the individuals is the main basis for prevention. And as Darlene also said, it's the small
If you can have a
situation-
do's and don'ts, like
Exactly.
if you have certain things you just brought out, so that
Mhm.
everybody are aware, then I think certain things are required. And we don't have any we have documentation, but they're general. We have laws, but then only you have something there. When you find it is it's being penalized. When is that there? When certain things are norms, social norms. But when you think that you're cross, and then that becomes a problem. Like somebody asked, when somebody is using your words, then can you call it as? But then here that is definitely certain words which have hurt a person psychologically, that can also be brought into in a different way. Then that can also be mentioned as in talk of harassment. So that's how a question came up. So we do have something of the POXO where for child prevention, we have that. But I think in
Yeah.
sport, we need to bring in. We need to bring in for the sport. Ma'am, it's been such a wonderful session. It's been very informative session. And just a session is not enough, because
Okay.
this is something which are actually life lessons which we need to actually give. That's how
Yeah.
it becomes important. So we
Can
come
you-
to the end of the
can you hear
session.
me now?
Yes, Talin, please.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on, but nonetheless, I wanted to just add the part that's so important, I think, with all of this is that we have to find ways. Someone asked the question, well, how do we get this raised to the national level? And I know there's been many, well, I think many articles written in newspapers online from India talking about the safety of children, but specifically the safety of girls. And so it might be possible for people in an organization, because people pay more attention to organizations than one person, to talk with the legislators who are women or who are allies of women, to see if this could be brought to a higher level of discussion. If that is not possible, then maybe find someone in the media who could highlight or put the focus on this issue. Just remember that when we talk about these things, there will be people who will want to be ugly about this, and they will threaten all sorts of things. So you have to be ready mentally for that, but it might be time, and you may find enough allies to be able to have the discussion, because as Dr. Rosa said, when the discussion can come, then things have a chance to change.
Yeah.
Not easy, but in Kluka's opinion, for the future of all of us, to make the world 50-50, you know, with yesterday, Uri says 51% women. Yeah, okay. But to get the world to be fully functioning, this has to be discussed and resolved.
Thanks a lot, Darlene, for your valuable contribution. I know in spite of having an appointment with you, I was worried because we could hear you. Thank you so much. Dr. Kishore, sir, are you there? Dr. Kishore, sir? I think I know this is a meeting. So we come to the end of the session. Dr. Rosa.
Madam, 1 minute, madam.
Yeah, yes. Kishore, sir, for your remarks, please. You need to unmute, sir. You need to unmute. You put that across. Put it. No. Yes, sir. So for your remarks, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Usha, and thank you very much, ma'am, Dr. Rosa Dick-Muller, for the wonderful presentation on safeguarding in sports. It has got much relevance with the present context of our program for women teachers. This is something most relevant and one which should be with which one should be forearmed. All the professionals who are in the field, how to safeguard. And I'm sure, as usual, your presentation was marvelous, and we place on record our sincere appreciation for your efforts early in the morning. All the sort of, and I'm sure your the participants, which is around 6,500 who are there, will definitely be indebted to you for this presentation and the wonderful discourse which you had. Thank you so much, ma'am, and all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Kishore, sir. Thank you so much. Before we wind up, we have the feedback, please. Kindly put in the feedback, all the participants. You can see the feedback form. Please do fill in. All the participants, I request you to kindly fall in the feedback. First time they're doing it. Thank you. Thanks. I think they're doing it based. Okay. Can we get we'll also send the number of participants and can you get this feedback for them? We'll try to send along with the feedback. We'll try to give you in the appreciation certificate along with that too. Number of participants. Can you see the screen, Dr. Rosa?
Mm-hmm.
So we had nearly 1,400 of them who have already voted.
It's really exciting.
I understand. That's what they've been doing. It's the numbers. Have you crossed 2,000? And we'll give you the feedback. This also, we need to, can you forward that in the mail so that will be required for them. Each feedback also will send it. And we'll forward you the feedback form too.
Okay,
August,
super.
we'll do that because that can be of use to you. The entire feedback we'll forward that.
Super good. It's nice to see the chat.
The chat also, we'll forward the chat as well as the feedback. We'll do that.
Mhm.
So we'll just wait for some time so that I think in 1 minute, 36 seconds, more than 2,500 have voted.
Never got the feedback of 5,000.
Yeah.
No, the feedback might be around 100 or so, whatever the cases, but it's still good number when you say. And they've been very, our teachers have been very, what do you call, they've been highly responsive and very critical in asking questions.
This is a good group.
A very good group,
Excellent.
very good and the smart group, this group.
Yep.
All the women teachers are doing excellent.
And you know, if through this course you have questions, not questions, but comments that other than put it in Hindi, okay, make sure that we hear those too, because we want to make sure that we're presenting things that are